Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix. And it says we are live. Yay! Once again.
One more time.
Hello. Happy Tuesday, folks.
Hello.
And thank you for joining us on the TeaFlix Tuesday. I'm all my little warriors. I presume you either have your corkscrews out or your kettles on or all of the above. And
speaking of which,
speaking of which, cheers.
Yes.
Here's to
purely for medicinal purposes, this is, of course.
Indeed, Wednesday Eve, indeed. So today, all the way from Thailand, God bless this man for staying up so late for little old us. We have a music industry legend, if you've seen the promo that we've been doing for it. Simon Napier-Bell is one of the most influential and unconventional figures in modern music history. You can say that again.
No.
With a career spanning more than 6 decades as a musician, songwriter, producer, manager, author, filmmaker, and entrepreneur. Born in London in 1900, not going to say it, he first pursued music as a jazz trumpeter overseas before returning to England in the early 60s to work in film and music production. He helped write the English lyrics for Dusty Springfield's hit, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, then moved into artist management during the explosion of British rock music. Simon first gained major recognition managing the Yardbirds, working alongside legendary artists Eric Clapton, Beck, and Jimmy Page. He later worked with acts including Marc Bolan, Japan, Ultravox, Boney M, Asia, and numerous others. He then became internationally famous in the 1980s as the co-manager of Wham, helping guide the careers of George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley during the group's global success. His greatest achievement came in 1985 when he successfully negotiated Wham's historic concerts in communist China, making them the first Western pop act to perform there during the Cold War era.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond management, Napier-Bell became a respected music historian and author. His books include You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, Black Vinyl White Powder, I'm Coming to Take You to Lunch, and Tarara Boombier, offering insider perspectives on the global music business. In recent years, he's also directed documentaries and remained active as a speaker and consultant within the entertainment industry. Now based mainly in Thailand, although he's been known to hop on a plane and go to London for breakfast, he continues to travel internationally whilst developing new creative projects. One of his latest ventures with 2 UK partners is Legacy World Artists, a platform focused on preserving, promoting, and creating opportunities for legendary artists' interpretations and their cultural legacies. So once again, I can't believe you stayed up for us. Mr. Simon Napier-Bell, welcome.
Hello, Simon.
This would be an early night nowadays, wouldn't it? I
mean, absolutely.
You don't stay up to 1:30. You're lucky if you can get to sleep by 1:30, aren't you?
That's right.
Exactly, yeah.
That's right. Well, happy Wednesday. Happy hump day where you are.
Dare we ask what time it is?
It is 1:30, yeah.
On Wednesday morning.
A nice time for dinner. You know, in the 60s at 1:30, I'd say, let's go and have dinner. We'd all go out.
That's right.
There was a wonderful Chinese restaurant called the Lotus House in Edgware Road. And you went in there at 1 a.m. It was full of celebrities and stars just starting their dinner. They'd be there till 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose being so close to the West End, all of the cast and crew have got to go somewhere when they're done with the show, right?
I don't know where they go nowadays because all those late night restaurants are gone, completely gone.
Oh, what a shame.
It's a while since I've been to London.
Yeah.
I mean, they went right through the 80s. I mean, at Stringfellows, you could go in at 1 or 2 in the morning and have a dinner, a proper dinner. Yeah, I don't think it's anywhere now.
Yeah.
Speaking of Stringfellows, getting away from the script for a minute, we were wondering, were you, obviously you must have known Peter Stringfellow. Mm-hmm. Were you by any chance at Julian Lennon's 21st birthday party at Stringfellows?
No. I was in there quite often, but I wasn't there that night, no.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Julian came riding a white horse. He came in on a horse. Now follow that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought it might have been exactly the kind of gathering that you would have found yourself at, but never mind. It was a shot in the dark. Ant has a question about your early musicianship.
So yes, what's the definition of a trumpet player with a pager? An optimist.
A trumpet player. Well, I was.
Yeah, with a beeper, with a pager.
Yeah.
It's an optimist because he thinks he's going to get beeped for a gig.
Not very quiet, hasn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Go better.
Well, this Liverpool humour. A pager. I don't know how you'd use a pager. A modern pager or an old-fashioned pager too.
Yeah.
They're tiny now. They bleep in your brain now.
So how did you get started with trumpet, for God's sake, of all instruments?
Well, I fell in love with it. I mean, I when I was 10 or 11, I fell in love with jazz. I read every book there was on jazz. My brother was given a trumpet for a Christmas present, and he couldn't cope with it. He didn't like it. So I took it away and learnt it. And I completely fell in love with jazz. I mean, trad jazz it was then. What was it? Louis Armstrong and groups like that. I listened to all the records, and we had a jazz band at school and played all those things. I got quite good. I mean, I went off to America to be a professional musician when I was 18. So I immigrated to Canada, actually. And I earned a living playing the trumpet for 3 years. But I'd gone there thinking I was going to be the greatest trumpet player in the world. I was going to be Dizzy Gillespie or Miles Davis or somebody. Yeah. And bit by bit, you find out you'll just be somebody who plays in a pub or in a bar. Yeah. And that wasn't what I wanted. So I dropped that.
Wow. But you came to America and had obviously a successful musical stint, as you said.
Not very successful.
No, really? I mean,
no. Well, I mean, look, playing the trumpet is great. 2 or 3 years playing a trumpet teaches you everything. It was. I played in a place in Hamburg, which is a place in Montreal, which is very like the places in Hamburg where the Beatles played. It was the first pub when it was the biggest port in North America then, I think, on Northeast America. And when the boats came in, the first pub when the seamen got off a boat was our pub. And some of them had been to sea for 3 or 4 months. They had a lot of money. And our job was to make sure they spent every penny they had without going on to the next pub. So there was the band playing all the hits they wanted, and they had to tip the pianist, and he split it with us, and there were hookers. And there was everything you could want to keep you there, A thoroughly sordid and debauched place with gunfights and knife fights and things happening every night.
Oh my God. And when you think of Montreal and the Jazz Fest, you don't think about gunfights and knife fights, but I guess you're not down by the port. Was it in the old port or was it sort of near the...
I don't even know. I mean, you just got there every night and went straight into the pub. I never saw a boat. I never saw a boat, but there were probably only 100 yards further on. I just didn't go that far. Yeah, it's a pretty sordid. I mean, it's amazing. You saw amazing things there. It's a filthy place. I mean, just to the right of the bandstand was the gents' toilet, and so anybody who wanted to go to the loo had to walk past all the chairs and the people sitting in front of the bandstand to the toilet. And we knew when we only had an hour left to go because every night the toilet overflowed, and when the urine flowed out across the floor, we knew we'd all be going home in an hour. It was 8 hours a night. It was a hell of a stint.
God, that's bloody good exercise. Yeah, when you think
8 till 4 every night, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off.
Oh my Lord.
Really hard work.
That's a lot of music to keep in your head too.
Well, the amazing thing was all I'd done from age of 12 to 18 was play jazz and love jazz. First trad jazz, Dixieland, and then I got to like modern jazz, and I knew every jazz number there ever was. And I arrived at this pub to do the job, and I didn't know a single pop song, and all we were playing was pop songs. And I just didn't know one. I hadn't listened to one all through my childhood, all through my teenage years. I didn't, not even Elvis and things like that. So I had a real quick learning curve to find out that. And I learned very quickly, which is amazing, that pop is cleverer than jazz, that well-crafted pop songs are real artistry. And jazz, you give the jazz man a few chords and off he goes, he tootles away and does a bit of improvising. That's not so clever. Yeah. Writing great pop. I learned right then, listening to them, learning these great songs, writing great pop songs. That's real art.
That's probably, and we'll get to it a bit later, but that's probably one of the things that attracted you to Wham, because boy, did George and sometimes
great pop writing. It's like writing great poetry. I mean, it is a craft, really.
It truly is, and you can sort of name those people still. Maybe not on one hand, but certainly on. You don't need more than two. I mean, when Michael Bublé, speaking of Canada, Montreal came along, when he came along, and that Just Haven't Met You Yet. I had that same feeling as when the first time I heard Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. I'm like, there is a song that is constructed, it's thought about, it's toe tapping, you can whistle it, you'll never forget it. You know, you're right. It is absolutely a craft. It's and it's, you know, it's one that pays handsomely in the old days, but not so much nowadays. But we'll get to that as well. So you got a break. So after Canada, you went back to the UK, and is that?
I went back. I hitchhiked around America for a year. I wasted a year not playing the trumpet, just hitchhiking,
Wow.
thinking what to do, you know, and reading books. I went in a little pack sack, and I kept myself looking neat and tidy, and I spoke with a lovely English accent. So when I was picked up and given a lift, I'd usually charm them into buying me a hamburger or taking me home to stay with the wife and kids for the weekend. So I did quite well. And then finally, I thought, I had to think of what I was going to do. So I went back to England, and I managed to get a job in the film industry at the very bottom, which is in the cutting room, helping them cut the film. And because I knew music, bit by bit, I was given music to edit, and that sort of got me back into music business.
Gotcha. Okay, so you've gone from being a jazz trumpeter to a pop musician to a film editor. There's not many people who can wear those hats. You must be seriously left-brained creative. But then
I hadn't started really, had I? It was from there. I'd actually got back into the music business, because when I was film editing, I made quite a lot of money, and I bought a Swish car. And so I had enough money to go to posh clubs and things. So I began to meet the people in the music industry, because that's where they went. And I'd go to like the Ad-Lib or something like that. And then I'd meet all these interesting people. And at 2 or 3 o'clock, I'd say, I've got to go home because I've got to be at the film studio in the cutting room at 9 in the morning. And they say, oh, stay a bit later. I can't. I've got to sleep 3 hours at least. And they'd stay. And I said, well, how can you stay? What do you do? Oh, we're in the music business. I thought, oh, that's the business to be in. You know, you don't have to go home at all.
Throw away your alarm clock, but it doesn't actually work like that if you're really in the music business, does it? You still have to be in at 9 or 10.
Yeah, I mean, I then got in the music business. You know, I had a bit of luck. I wrote "You Don't Have to Say Love Me" because I've met this girl who's the producer of Ready, Steady, Go, Vicky Wickham, and her best friend was Dusty Springfield, and Dusty had this Italian song she wanted lyrics for. And Vicky said, Dusty wants lyrics for this. You know, what should I do? Who should I go to get them? And I said, well, why don't we try them? Vicky said, well, we don't know how to do it. And I said, well, that doesn't matter. Let's start learning. So we learned quite quickly. We had good beginners' luck, as you saw. And then I became manager of the Yardbirds, which is another bit of luck. So suddenly I went from absolutely nothing. I knew nothing about the music business. So I knew as little about the music business at that stage as I'd known about pop songs when I got the job at the pub in the docks. But I'm a quick learner, and it seemed like the place I should work. And what you said about going to bed late, I think for 5 years I never went to bed before 5 in the morning, but I always had to be up at 8. You had to be in the office at 9:30. You know, everybody worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
You drank 2 bottles of wine at lunch and struggled through the afternoon and got home, maybe had an hour's sleep and went out again.
Yeah.
A non-stop roundabout, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Between Morton's and Rags, they could pour it down. You couldn't they? A cowboy burger and a bottle of House White would see you through lunch, and then.
Yeah, it was non-stop. I mean, it was 2-hour lunch. A good 8 hours. Offices, it's very different now. We all work from home, and everybody works from home. But it really, even in the music business, you're expected to be in the office from at least 10 till 1, 10 to 12:30, and then 2:30 till 6. Yeah. And I think I was. I mean, although it was the music business, so it was quite sort of jovial work.
Yeah.
But it's still hard work.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not an easy job. It's just a fun job.
It is fun, but there are so many nuances, and it's like learning a new language, isn't it? And when you're a newbie in the business, all the acronyms and all the if you know this guy, you might get an appointment with that girl. It's all about relationships at the beginning, isn't it? To really sort of get in the door. How?
I mean, the two key things in the industry are 3 things really. I think I can fall now. But knowledge, I mean, the more you know about it, the better you're going to do. So as a beginner, it's really tough. You're flying by the seat of your pants. After 20, 30 years, that's a huge help. But hard work too, and luck, knowledge, hard work and luck.
Well, and yeah, luck and as part of timing. One of my dear old school friends, Julia Neal, has just popped on and said, "What a lovely, talented chap you are." And she grew up in and around a group of friends with Andy McCluskey from OMD, and she had a band, and we used to practice in her front room, and I was relegated to the tambourine because I couldn't do crap. And she wound up, talk about timing, co-writing a couple of orchestral maneuvers in the dark songs. And, it's sort of, I wouldn't say it's, let her retire in the comfort to which she deserves, but, it keeps the lights on from here to there, doesn't it? So it's all about putting yourself out there and having a go. I mean, when you said, Vicky said, we don't know how to write lyrics. Well, have a go, for God's sake.
Yeah.
That's it. It is that. I mean, it's luck, but you have to know how to get luck. I mean, getting luck it sounds a stupid thing to say it's luck, but you know how to get it. But it's like, a lottery. You're not going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
Exactly.
If you might go into a pub and see George Michael and sign him up. But if you hadn't gone out, you wouldn't have seen him. So you can't sit at home and have luck delivered to you. You've got to go out and find it. And
right.
you get better and better as you go on through life in knowing how to head towards luck and where you might find it and what. So maybe you should stop calling it luck and call it skillful navigation or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I used to have a T-shirt years ago, a little bedazzled thing, and it just said, "Luck is where preparedness meets opportunity."
Something like that.
Yeah, it's in the vernacular there. So I was going to say about relationships and meeting. How did you meet Jazz Summers, who became your business partner in co-managing Wham? And how did you manage the sort of 180-degree differences in between you? Because you and Jazz, you were very different, weren't you?
Well, I mean, I don't think I appreciated it when I began working with him, but I certainly did after a while. Those differences are really good. I mean, there's not much point having two people who can do exactly the same thing. Yeah, and so bit by bit, we got on incredibly well. I mean, we never had a quarrel, we never had a row, but he would row with everybody else. I mean, he was a real aggressive, difficult, hard person. Oh, and wow. That's what I'm not. I'm a compromising, I find a solution and let's sit down and talk about it. And sometimes it isn't the thing to do. Sometimes there isn't time. Sometimes, somebody's causing a trouble. Or even when an artist suddenly gets terrible stage fright, as they do, even though they're the biggest star in the world, or some emotional, I can't go on tonight, to sit down and say, well, let's talk about it. That isn't the right thing to do. I saw Jazz pick up George Michael and bang him against the walls and get out the fucking stage. And George was amazed. How could his manager speak like that? He was so shocked he walked out on stage. But if it had been me, we'd have been sitting in the dressing room for 2 hours with him crying, So,
yeah, dear. Well, I suppose in the end, I know we lost Jazz a little while ago, but it's just an incredible pairing that you got. Tell the folks the story about how you sort of picked Wham from the Top of the Pops alumni, if you will. Well,
I'd met Jazz. He was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and he came to see me at my house. And we knew immediately that we didn't get on. We knew immediately we were not suited for each other, absolutely at once. But we were too polite to say anything to each other. So I said, let's go and have lunch. So he was, I come from public school. I speak a bit posh. He comes from something much less and deliberately tries to speak in a down market way. So his dad was in the army, so he's not really, he's not a bottom of the rung class thing, but he tries to pretend he was, he'd always talk like that when he didn't really have to talk like that, And so we went off to lunch. We went on the corner to a Chinese restaurant I knew. And when the waiter came, he spoke in Chinese. I thought, no, this isn't quite the guy I'd seen when he came in the door. And now he speaks Chinese. That's a bit surprising, isn't it? So from that minute on, I was looking at him with a different light. His dad had been stationed in China, in Hong Kong, for 10 years when Jazz was young enough to pick it up. And he spoke quite good Cantonese. And so that really changed my mind straight away. And we got on very well. And we'd both seen Wham do that incredible first appearance at Top of the Pops. And we both quite independently looked at it and said, this is a group which has to happen. They're absolutely amazing, fantastic imagery. The thing about that Top of the Pops, they played Young Guns on it, and anyone who knew how Top of the Pops was filmed knew that the director didn't allow the groups to rehearse. The director just said, get up there on the stage, we'll film you. And the director might film his cameraman, but he didn't rehearse the group. The director might tell the cameraman, do this, that, and the other. But the group got no chance to rehearse. And Wham looked like they'd been in the studio for a week rehearsing. Yeah. And you knew for them to have done that, they must have gone to the studio in a previous week, watched a previous episode of Top of the Pops being filmed, and then gone home and rehearsed it and practiced it and said, you pretend the camera's there, look at the camera. So they really had done homework in a way that most groups don't. And that was impressive. For people who are managers, to see a group who've gone to that trouble, you've got something really special.
Well, yeah, you got perfectionists on as you and Jazz Summers as co-pilots of the whole Wham thing were completely different personalities. Were George and Andrew very different? I mean, obviously.
Completely. I mean, the one that's the extraordinary thing when you first met them, you saw them on Top of the Pops doing that thing, and they looked like Starsky and Hutch, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, the classic,
brothers. I thought they were brothers.
Classic Hollywood image of the bromance, the two young guys out in the town having fun. And then when they came to see us, they're absolutely different characters. I mean, Andrew was that character. George was faking being Andrew when they were together on stage. So it was two Andrews, the real one and the pretend one. And then when they came to see you, you met George, and he was suspicious and difficult and really investigative and not trusting, and you could see at once he'd come from a difficult background and was very cautious of giving too much to people and letting them know too much about him. And I thought that was wonderful to have two people who are so different, one person who could be the image and one person who could look behind the scenes and think about the business. So that's just like Jazz and I. So I thought this makes four people, four real different characters.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and when you say there was a pretend Andrew, which was George, he obviously knew the part that the fans wanted him to play on stage and in interviews and music videos. But when you hear about after his passing, when you hear about all of the secret philanthropy that he did, he was obviously very financially savvy and business minded. And Andrew was, the happy-go-lucky, let's all have fun while it lasts.
Well, I mean, when George first started writing songs, I don't know how many of these ended up as Wham songs. When he first started writing songs, he was writing songs for Andrew, who he sat next to in class. So he really revered Andrew. Andrew, when George first went to school, he was young and spotty and curly hair and wore glasses and he looked a real amazing. a real gimp, not someone you wanted to sit next to. And when he was introduced to the class, and the teacher said, "Who wants to sit next to the new boy?" Everybody went, and Andrew said, "I'll do it." And Andrew was like the lad around the classroom, the one everybody loved.
Sure.
So George hit the jackpot straight away. And he went home to his mum and said, "I want to have contact lenses, and I want hair straightener, and I want to lose weight." And he wanted to look like Andrew, So he spent the whole of his school days trying to look like Andrew. And then when he started writing songs, decided he wanted to write songs, he was writing songs for Andrew to perform with somebody else. And they never found the other person. They couldn't find someone suitable. So in the end, George said, "Oh, well, I'll do it," So he was acting from the very beginning.
Wow. That's wonderful. Oh, well, I'll do it. I mean, imagine if George hadn't said, "Oh, well, I'll do it."
Well, I think he understood. I think he understood he would never have the confidence to get up on stage by himself. He far too shy and introverted. But Andrew gave him the confidence to walk up on stage. So, Andrew was his training. It was extraordinary. Without Andrew, George wouldn't have existed at all. Not as an artist, anyway.
I saw them live at the Hollywood Palladium in the early '80s. And
I was there. I don't remember seeing you, actually. Where were you hiding away?
I don't know, but my hair was the same color, but it was literally down past my knees. I had a little coxcomb back comb thing, right, and long white hair down, almost down to my ankles. So if you'd have seen me, you'd have seen me. But no, I went home that night thinking, well, I need to be Mrs. Andrew Ridgely because damn, because he's good. I never got the inkling that, George was of the other persuasion, but oh my God, what a pair they made. And the energy, it was just electric.
It was very interesting on the first night of the first big tour. No, the first tour. It wasn't a huge tour, but it was the tour when they wore all those feeler clothes and shorts and things like that. Yeah. Which is the only sponsor I could find. You know, they sent me off to try and find a sponsor. I was planning to come back with huge amounts of money, and we could go to drive Rolls Royce to gigs, and all I came back was a bit of sports clothes and feeler. And they were very undaunted. They say, all right, well, that's what we'll wear. And they did it brilliantly. But on the first night of that tour, George had dark hair.
Yep.
And Andrew came out blonde, and all the girls screamed at Andrew. Nobody screamed at George. I mean, the hits were written by George, but they screamed at Andrew. Yep. By the end of the tour, George had blonde hair, and they all screamed at George. I mean, in one tour, he'd learnt the whole routine of how to do it.
I remember he started with the frosted tips, didn't he? And then gradually...
That was the beginning, and he ended up looking like Princess Di.
Well, you know, hello. That's how it starts.
He didn't have a good sense of when to stop.
Oh, that's funny. But you were involved with so many different artists.
Yeah. How did you meet Marc Bolan?
Oh, he met me. I mean, he came to me. I was just sitting at home one night having my end of the day gin and tonic. No, not the end of the day. The end of the office day before you went out clubbing. My recover from a nasty afternoon in the office, gin and tonic. And there's a ring at my doorbell.
We should do that.
Yeah. Let's write that down.
I can't do it. Yeah. That was before going out for your wine and then your brandies. And there's a ring at the door, and this lad was there, and he'd been given my address by somebody. And he just was very small. I mean, you know how small he was. He was 5'1" or something.
Yeah, it could have been a jockey.
A bit like a Dickensian urchin. He had a little schoolboy's cap on, and he had a guitar slung over his back. And he just said, I've been given your address, and I'm going to be the biggest star in the world. You're a manager, aren't you? And I said, yes. He said, I'm going to be the biggest star in the world. I want a manager. And I said, well, come to the office tomorrow. He said, oh, well, I'm here now. Could I sing a song? And I thought, I'll give him 5 minutes. But I tried to daunt him. I tried to make him feel overwhelmed, because it's the best way to test somebody. So I said, all right, sing a song. Go on. You know, I stood there like this, sing a song. And he looked around my room, and I had this one big armchair, and he climbed up into it like a dog gets into a chair. Now, not on the chair, but in the chair, you know, settled into it.
He was so tiny.
Yeah, settled back in the chair, crossed his legs. So he was actually sitting, you know, surrounded by the chair. And he got out his guitar. And no hurry. I mean, he wasn't rushed. And he put a capo on it, and he just fiddled with it, and he started playing and sang these amazing songs, one after another, for 45 minutes. And after 45 minutes, I stopped him, and I said, I want to record them. And I booked a recording session there and then. I phoned around. I found one still open. We went to Kingsway Studios in Holborn
that night,
9 o'clock in the evening. And we recorded for 2 hours, every song he knew. And it came out as an album, actually, later, much later, called The Beginning of Doves. And it was everything we recorded that first night.
Wow.
And that was it, really. I mean, you couldn't let him go. It was magical, hypnotic voice.
Yeah.
Well, oh, absolutely. With that little tiny tremolo sort of, you know, very...
Yeah, which he got because he had, who was it? I can't remember who. Some male singer he took a fancy to, and he only had albums, and he played them at 78. Oh, it was Billy Eckstein, who had this very slow vibrato. Billy Eckstein, I wonder, and he put it on so he goes, wonder, like that. And so he copied the voice. And so he was Billy Eckstein that played at 78. And that's the voice he invented.
Oh, my Lord. That's just, we're spilling the tea here on TeaFlix,
Not
folks.
off, yep.
If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget, go downstairs, subscribe. We have fabulous guests every Tuesday. That was Marc Bolan's solo. At what point in the evolution of things was John's Children versus T-Rex?
Well, we made a record, and it was a very, very good record. You can still hear it today. It was hippie gumbo, and it had an orchestral backing, and it had wonderful lyrics. But I still think the best lyrics he ever wrote. And I took it round to every single record company, and there's about 8 of them in those days. And one by one, they said all those things stupid record company people say, you know, well, love the voice, not sure about the song. Great voice, great song, not sure about the voice. Could do well on the continent. You know, all that crap. People
do well on the continent. I'm coming to take you to London.
The end of it all, you know, after 8 record companies, the answer was no. And I came back, and he wasn't ready for that at all. He was so overconfident and full of certainty about himself. And so I had to tell him no, and he was desperately upset. I mean, really didn't know what to do. And his first instinct said, well, do anything you want, you know, do what they want. What did they say I had to do? And I said, no, don't do that. He said, no, we must do. We've got to do what they want. And but I persuaded him that you didn't do what he wanted. You stay who you are, and eventually they'll come to you. And so I said, once you join John's Children, who are just on the verge of having quite a bit of success. Yeah. And I said, sing backing vocals, and then on the records, people will hear your voice behind the lead voice, not as the lead voice. And they'll get used to it. And then after a year of that, you can leave and people will now be familiar with your voice. Wow. And I thought he'd say no. He was so individual and unique. And he agreed. And not only agreed, he really enjoyed it. He joined the group and they enjoyed him. We had to throw the guitar out. It's a terrible thing to do. He said he would, and I had to call up next day and tell the guitarist he was fired. And he wasn't bad or anything. He said, why? Why am I fired? I said, I found someone else I want to put the group. Sorry, goodbye. You know, I'm not usually that sort of nasty, ruthless manager. No. That day I had to be. And off he went, and Marc joined, and he was really very, very good within the group. But we eventually we supported the Who on a tour of Germany, and we came back from that tour. And on the way back from the tour, we drove. They were all 4 of them in my Bentley, and we drove back through Luxembourg and stayed the night in Luxembourg. And next door to the hotel at the National Theatre in Luxembourg was a concert by Ravi Shankar. Oh. So I said, tonight's a culture evening. We're all going to go and watch the great Indian sitar player Ravi Shankar. I bought them front row tickets to the Circle. And Marc fell in love. I want to be, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in a rug and play my guitar. No more electric instruments. I don't like that. And when we got back to London, that was it. He was not going to go on with John's Children. And we went to Edgware Road and we found a cut-off rug from a carpet shop. And he bought some joss sticks and a bottle to put them in, and then found someone to play the tablas, which is actually Mickey Finn playing the bongos.
Mickey Finn, yeah.
And that was Tyrannosaurus Rex. So off on the next stage.
Good grief. But so if you hadn't taken him to see Ravi Shankar, he might have lived and died in John's Children. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, he was perfectly happy with them until then. But that just, and it was the right thing. I mean, he suddenly, because he'd always wanted to be a solo star. He didn't really want to be part of a group, although he quite enjoyed it. And he just didn't know how to get to be the star he wanted. Yeah. But he was absolutely right, because there was only a very small step between the little guy who sat in the middle of my armchair and the guy who sat in the rug. There was a great similarity. And once he saw it, he knew that's what he had to do.
Wow. We actually, unfortunately, saw him, do you remember, in Morton's? Yeah. The last night of his life. We were sitting in the next booth.
I'd been to Morton's that night too, but I'd left earlier.
Yeah. I said to Ruth only this morning, I feel as though you and I know each other. Maybe we did at Morton's or something.
We met. I think we probably met in Liverpool in your house, actually. I went there once with Mike. I produced The Scaffold.
That's right.
And we went up to Liverpool to get, I don't know why, but Roger or Mike said, you can't produce The Scaffold unless you get the feel of where we come from, a rather sort of artistic seriousness. So I said, well, that's all right. We're quite fun. So we got Ray Singer and I were producing them. We went up and so Mike took us home and you were there. So we did meet then.
She was probably playing in the background, being the tea lady, dropping me off to school, picking me up from school.
Well, the tea was okay. I do remember it was okay. So
it's still on sale.
Yeah, it's still on sale at mrsmccartneysteas.com, you see. There you go. See what I did there? No, she has an organic tea company.
But Angie, we may have met in Morton's as well. I mean, I'm sure we were regulars.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Absolutely. Absolutely. North end of Berkeley Square, wasn't it? Morton's?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, God, those was the days. Yeah, I remember seeing Marc Bolan 1 or 2 booths down, and we were still there, and he left, and I sort of just smiled at him, like, thumbs up, like big fan. And then I got home that night, couple of hours, well, probably even an hour and a half later, and it was on the radio. As I came home and I'm doing dishes or whatever, put the radio on. I'm like, it can't be true. We'd just seen him. He was alive. Like
and the awful thing is too that I lived in Putney at that time, and that road he drove down is how I drove home every single night. I mean, I'd driven down that road an hour before him. And we all, shouldn't admit it now, but you can't really deny it. We all drank and drove home. I mean, there was no anti-drink driving things.
Yeah.
Nothing came into the bit. It wasn't just there wasn't a law against it. They didn't even tell you shouldn't. I mean, it wasn't. No one talked about it.
Right, and I think in British society, it was like, the more you can drink, the more invincible and bulletproof you are, right?
So you think.
Sink as many pints. Or
you know what? There was one time I was incredibly drunk. It was in the 60s, not the 80s, but I was incredibly drunk. I drank probably. I have no idea. The sort of over-the-top amount we all drank the music business. I got my car to drive home, and coming down Knightsbridge, I misjudged something, and I hit a parked car on my side and bounced onto the next car on the next one, and just missed a bus. And it was, 6 cars had their doors ripped off, and the bus just missed me. And I got out of the car, and the policeman was right there. He'd seen the whole thing. And he said, "Oh, that was the bus. It made you swerve, didn't it?" Which is probably what had happened, but I was blind drunk. And I said, "Yes, that was a bit frightening." And he said, "Oh, you must be very shaken. Let me buy you a brandy." And he took me in the pub and bought me a brandy.
Oh, no.
So that's the difference since the 1960s.
Those were the days, Simon.
We did. I mean, it's. But you're right. It was horribly irresponsible, and I wouldn't dream of it now. But
I wouldn't. And I did eventually get done for drunk driving. I got off. I didn't get prosecuted, and so I was lucky to get off. And I said to my lawyer, if I hadn't got off, what would they have fined me? And he told me the fine, and I donated that much to Oxfam. And I said, how long would I be banned from driving? He said 3 years. So I sold my car, and I didn't drive for 3 years. So I did my punishment. Well, I wasn't found guilty. And then after that, I never drank again and drove. I mean, that was 30 years ago.
No, I fortunately didn't have an accident or anything. I just suddenly came to the realization when I was, 40 odd years ago now, that's why God made, in her wisdom, that's why God made taxis.
Well, I had lots of amazing moments. I remember one day I woke up and I'd got home, but I hadn't gotten the front door, and I was lying literally from the waist up, I was in the house, and from the waist down, my legs were sticking out in the garden.
Yeah, well, I had an incident where I was about 22, and it was my own front yard sprinklers that woke me up. So, same. Yeah, I didn't even.
What you think then is, well, that's fine. It's very funny. You can laugh at it, but suppose the police came down and said you killed someone last night.
Yeah.
And once you have to get a little bit older. It's this frontal lobe. It comes to effect when you're 28 or 29. Gives you a sense of cause and effect, and then you think, better not do it.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. Mm-hmm. So back to the music biz, and you were talking about being on tour in Hamburg and in Germany.
Yeah, you arranged for the pop group Boney M to return, to reform and have all their old.
I did. I had this brilliant idea. In whenever it was, 1986 or something. I think I read an article in the Sunday Times. Quite amazingly, it said that at that moment, 1986, Boney M was still the biggest selling record group in the world. They still sold at that moment more than the Beatles. I think mainly because they'd been popular in China, where Western groups weren't allowed, but for some reason Boney M had been allowed. And so I had the idea of, because they'd broken up 3 or 4 years earlier, and I had the idea of putting it together again. So I called the producer, Frank Farian, in Germany.
Just going to say you must go Frank Farian.
Yeah.
He says you'll never put them together. He said they're impossible. They hate each other. It's not that there are 4 of them, and it's not that one doesn't get on with the other 3. It's not one of them gets on with a single one of the others. They all don't get on.
Sounds like the story of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, don't worry. It's a little thing. All groups are like that. he was a record producer, not a manager. He didn't understand. Managers are used to that. So I went, they all came from different places. One was in the West Indies, one was in America, and one was in Holland, and one was in London. And I went round the four of them, rounding them up and talking to them. They all agreed. They were incredibly difficult. But then I got Frank Parian to give me all the records to remix, and I got Stockake and Waterman to remix them. So we had the absolute #1 record producer in the world remixing all those things.
Wow, absolutely.
And the album went out, and it didn't go out everywhere, but every country it went out in, it was in the top 10. And in France, they put a single and the album out the same week at the end of May, and they both went to #1. And in France, what goes to #1 at the end of the May stays there till August or the end of August, because they all go on holiday. Yeah. And so for 4 months, we were #1 album and single in France. And we had this incredible summer where we toured around France doing amazing gigs. There's nowhere in the world better to do summer gigs than France, because you go all around the Riviera, and every village has this enormous budget. There may only be 300 people living in the village, but they've got a budget where they can pay 25,000 for a top group, because the mayor gets a subsidy from the state or something. So we had a summer of midnight feasts in village squares. And
fantastic. Everybody in the chat is mentioning Rasputin, but I remember that summer. Sunny, One So True was the song of the summer all over the world, wasn't it?
It was, and that was the PWL remix too, which is extraordinary. But the thing about Rasputin, which is astonishing, is how that song has stayed current, because you hardly ever go to a disco anywhere in the world and you don't hear it. Even amongst all the current tracks and all the different mixes now, they end up finding a remix of it, or they do a new hip hop remix. It just comes up over and over again. It just doesn't go away.
When I was doing my pop star stint in the early 90s in Russia, Lithuania, Latvia, Siberia, Armenia, whatever, I was touring and selling 25,000 seater arenas and stuff. We were in, where were we? Siberia, Salikhard, Siberia. And our driver, his name was Rasputin.
Yeah.
Did he know the song?
He did by the time we were done with him. Yes, absolutely. And so we ended up nicknaming him Rara, because, Rara Rasputin. And what was fascinating about him was,
didn't he murder somebody?
He murdered somebody. He'd been in prison 19 years, and he had a 9 and a 4-year-old
son. Yeah. Hello.
A 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm like, oh, they must have conjugal visits in Siberia.
No.
I guess anything to keep warm. But he picked us up once we had this sort of minibus that looked like it was spray paint. It was orange, but there was sort of camo showing through underneath it. I think somebody nicked it from a local army base and made it into the rock and roll van. And at one point, I think they got done for stealing the van, and he showed up in an ambulance.
That's right. And it had footprints on the roof.
The whole thing inside the ambulance. Yeah. It was a plywood box. So no windows. They put like a plywood inside it, and there were bloody hand and footprints all over the inside of this ambulance.
Shows you what a big star she was.
And Rasputin was driving us. He's the guy that. Do you remember when I caught the flu?
Yeah, I do.
He came
to our hotel room. Yeah. Hotel, I used the word advisedly.
It was actually a mental hospital, because they didn't have a hotel in that town. And so
it's the best place for groups to stay, really, wouldn't it? We're wonderful. Every town had a special. Every mental home had a special wing for visiting pop stars when they're in town.
Rock stars, yeah,
exactly.
And he came to the
hotel room,
to the door, and he knocked, and he said something about
medicine,
malinki problema, like you have a little problem. And he's doing this with the throat, and I was just hoarse. I couldn't sing, whatever. And he said, "Here, drinky, and he hands me this little like shot bottle. And I'm like, well, what is it? Because it didn't look like vodka. And he said, yeah, benzene. He wanted me to drink petroleum, because in Siberia, apparently that's what they do to kill the germs. They have like a 2-ounce shot from the gas station.
It would have cheered you up.
might have set my ass on fire.
I spent 2 years in Russia too, because I managed a Russia group, which we got to #1 all over Russia. And I also managed I spent a year managing a Russian girl singer called Alsu, who we got to #2 in Eurovision. And so the highest, Russia had never been higher than second from bottom Usually it was
Yeah.
Russia and England, the bottom two. And so they asked me to, I managed this girl for a year, and the idea was to make her a star outside of Russia. She was already a star in Russia. And we did to some degree do that. But one of the key things was to get her into Eurovision and win it or come high up so she'd get a good exposure. And so I had 2 years of that. I did that with her. And then I took on a young group, which we called Smash, with 2 exclamation marks. So there were twice as many as Wham. And they were sort of a Wham copycat, except they could both sing incredibly well, not just one of them. And they were #1 in Russia for 2 years. So that was a great different experience from managing Western roots. And, you know, there's something, I also spent 2 years in Spain and had a huge hit. In fact, people think you don't have to say Love is the biggest song I've ever written, but it isn't. I mean, I had a Spanish hit, which was the biggest selling single in Spanish language single in the 70s in all of South America. And it's a strange thing, having that success in Spain or that success in Russia. It's far more exciting than having success at home. Something about going to a foreign country and pulling it off again there. And it's not even your home. It's really, you know, great feeling. I really love that.
When I was living in Germany and signed to BMG, aka the Big Mean Germans, that's where I met Martin, my lovely current husband of 30 odd years. And he was working with Harold Faltermeyer of, you know, Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun fame. Martin was his go-to demo singer because he's got, you know, 4.5 raspy octaves in 2 languages. So Martin was sort of on call. And I got a strange phone call one night, and it was the days when the fax machine was just coming in. And Harold said, I need some lyrics very quickly. Can I play you a tune over the phone? And just write me a bunch of lyrics. Have you got a fax? And I said, I've just got one today. It's still in the box. So I had to figure all that out with Deutsche Telekom. And I wound up, again, where preparedness meets opportunity, and just being in a weird place in a foreign country, I wound up writing the lyrics, the German lyrics for ZDF for the Barcelona 1992 Olympics with Harold.
Be in the right place right now, isn't it? It's
right, yeah. And so, but had I not got the fax machine that day, I wouldn't have, you know, been able to do all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think people...
There are so many right place, right moment stories. I mean, if you could go through your life, tell the whole thing different ways. You can say I was incredibly clever and I thought this out and I made this plan, or you could tell almost the same story in another way, and the luck is there. And I usually see it in the luck way. I usually think when I get something wrong, when something goes wrong in my life or with business, I usually think I'm to blame. I've been a bloody fool. But when it goes right, I nearly always think, oh, I was lucky. You know, I was in the right place at the right moment. Yeah. And I think nearly every time a big success happens, I can see how it might not have happened if I just hadn't happened to be there at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we often say on this show that how lucky are we to be born in this, you know, the expanse of the universe and the multi-billions of years it's been around, that we were in this little tiny timeline where we had the Billy Joels and the Queen and the Beatles and Wham and all of these incredible people. Talk to us a little bit about your new venture, Legacy World Artists.
I've been making films the last 10 years. I mean, my dad was a film director, so something I always felt I ought to go back to. And I went back into documentary films at the age of 75. And for 10 years, I've been making them. But bit by bit, I mean, I'm very successful. We had 4 on Netflix and 2 on Amazon Prime. But bit by bit, I sort of have come to realize why I gave up the film industry originally, because it's terribly slow and there's so, because of the finance involved, you're endlessly waiting for other people to say yes. You can't just get on with things when you want to. And I've been watching what's happening in the music business. And so many people talk about the music business with sort of, oh, it's going downhill and it's not what it was. Well, it's not what it was. Nothing is ever what it was. But that doesn't mean it's bad. You know, it changes. And I look at it and I think, no, there's no negatives at all, really. What's happened is all the originators of the great rock music from the 60s and the 70s are no longer performing. And if they are performing, they're not actually doing it as well as young kids could do it. Right. And you have always what they call tribute groups. And I think it's quite an insulting term, because if you're a really clever, good young musician and you can play something as well as the Rolling Stones did or the Beatles did, and you're young and vibrant as they were, it's not much different from, Horowitz playing your Rachmaninoff's piano concerto. I mean, a modern pianist is going to play a great composer's work. And it's time people started looking at classic rock in the same way we look at classical music. It's going to have to be performed by new young people. Yep. And that's not tribute group, that's interpretation. And so I thought, I want to form a company just for that. And we've done that. And we look for artists who are great interpreters of other artists. So we have, for instance, we have a guy, it's a brilliant George Michael, quite sensationally good George Michael. But I don't let him go over the top being George Michael. He does an act which fills up a large theatre every night with 2,000 or 3,000 people paying quite a lot of money. But the idea was after 2 or 3 years for his name to be what was pulling people in rather than the George Michael's name. And so all our acts, it's just like I said about, the pianist playing Rachmaninoff. Who do you go to see? Are you going to hear Rachmaninoff or are you going to hear Horowitz playing? About half and half, and that's where it should be. Right. And so it's treating these young musicians who play classic repertoire with real respect. And we've very, very quickly picked up from around the world some of the very, very best. I mean, there are some extraordinary ones around. I mean, you've probably heard of Australian Pink Floyd, who play Pink Floyd with every bit as good as Pink Floyd do with a symphony orchestra. And they're playing in stadiums and Beyond Again. But there's loads of them. We found this extraordinary group in America called Black Leather Symphony, and they're a 5-piece rock group. You know
right.
Them. They play complete albums. So when you book them, they say, right, which 2 albums do you want? So we'll have the Beatles' White Album, and then we'll have Far Side of the Moon, or we'll have Genesis, followed by, and that's it. They play them impeccably and beautifully, which is very close to the classical model I was talking about.
Yeah, I think, in fact, after you and I had talked a few weeks ago, I sent you the link, Jay Willoughby.
You tell me about it. Okay, well, we follow those up. That's from, of course you know about it, because you tell me about it. And that's then there's some other, one of us, there's a group called Hindley Street Social Club. And they play a cross-section of, they call it yacht rock, but it's all the softer rock tracks.
Love that.
And
stuff.
they this month they're going to hit 1 billion views on YouTube. 1 billion, not 1 million.
Yeah, I mean
you can't call them a tribute group. I mean, they're a group in their own name. They're brilliant.
That's right. Well, and a lot of the big bands in the old days didn't play their own original music. They were cover tunes, and
look what the Beatles played in Hamburg, or the Stones played when I first saw them playing in clubs.
Exactly my point. No, and I think I was telling you whose birthday it is today. Michael Kavanagh is
another person you told me about. Yes, he's great too. Yeah.
He's fantastic, and Billy Joel handpicked him to play the piano man role on Moving Out in Broadway, which was Twyla Tharp was the choreographer, and so on. And then Liverpool legends, our dear friends from Branson, Missouri, are, in my estimation, the best Beatles band out there, and they get it down to the point where they'll have, like, the Paul character will have a packet of Peter Stuyvesant ciggies in his pocket, and John will have Pall Mall. I mean,
I'm not sure about all those things, because bit by bit we want to pull them towards being artists in their own set, in their own right.
Right. I mean,
we do have to start off where the audience is. The audience currently wants tribute groups. And we have to move them slowly towards being artists in their own right.
Right. Well, I think that's what Michael Kavanagh has successfully done.
Oh, Michael Kavanagh's done that already. And then Black Leather Symphony are really doing pretty much what we say with classical repertoire. They're just taking great classic rock repertoire. It's very exciting. And the great thing is, it's so much better than sitting waiting for someone to say, yeah, we got the finance in the film. I go, stuff your finance, stuff the film. I'm gone back to the music business, so it's far more fun.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. The demand is there. If people are sitting listening to those albums on, crap little MP3 speakers on Spotify, or
listen, the demand is there. We only started 6 weeks ago, and we've got 5 artists playing 500, 600 gigs next year already booked up. I mean, it's very cool.
We should talk offline, because we know a lot of those kids, and they're really out there just doing yeoman's work. And it's as a legacy to them and sometimes their parents' music. Sometimes the kids who were playing this music were turned on to it by their parents. So there's that familial connection there where they're trying to honor, the nostalgia of growing up and what they listened to in the household.
Think back to my childhood when I was 11 or 12 and I fell in love with trad jazz. That was exactly that. It was the 1930s. My dad, when I was 7 or 8, I went up to the attic and I found a wound-up gramophone. And I found all my dad's sold records.
Oh.
And they were all Red Nichols and the Five Pennies, which was 1930s Dixieland music. So that was sort of what I fell in love with. And I played that the first 10 years of my life.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So to the future, obviously we've talked about, legacy world artists.
Looking at your extraordinary career journey from British roots to global entertainment pioneer, what projects or passions are you keeping Simon Napier-Bell going today?
Is it all music, or is there room for a film? Will you write a book?
I don't like to be bored. That's all. I was saying to Ruth the other day when we were talking, I'm sort of I'm a bit older than Ruth now, not quite as old as you, but I'm stuck in the middle there. And things I can't drink as much as I used to. Sex isn't really on the menu anymore. So it gives you a lot of extra time every day. And you've got to fill it up. So it's back to work, really, just to stop getting bored.
Yeah, no, obviously you've written the incredible books that I mentioned. Please do go to simonnapierbell.com and Amazon, wherever you are watching this in the world. This man is, he's a polymath when it comes to being an author and a manager and a musician and a cajoler and a wheedler and a persuader.
Go to my weekly Substack, because I write every week on that too, and that's another day a week taken up, so that's quite good.
And it was and a Substacker. I was about to say, if that is even a word, but do you think there's another book in your future?
Yeah, I sort of started the Substack meaning that to be a book, but I'm not sure it will be now. But it's made me enjoy writing again, because it's writing 1,000 words at a time, rather than saying, look, here's, you've got to sit down in a room by yourself for 6 months. And so it's writing in a different way than I'd done before. Taking longer to write a book, but spreading it out much more. Definitely is another book coming out of it.
Good.
Then I shall have to throw some make room on my bookshelf and throw some
another group, another big act, probably another film.
Another bookcase.
Our friend Paul Moody, whose late mom was a wonderful sort of jazz curator down here at the beach near LAX. They have a beach house, and every summer she would hold all of the Marsalises, and everybody would be invited. It was sort of a beach barbecue, but it was the who's who of jazz. Miss her dearly. But he's just saying that Zepparella is an old girl doing incredible Zeppelin. So there
are 2 or 3 Zeppelin groups, and there's one called Les Zeppelin.
Right.
It's led. And Jimmy Page is in all of them. He goes to see them, and he says the lead guitarist is as good as him. It's a bit different. Wow. He doesn't have any downside to them at all. He just says they're quite sensational.
That's
great. There's no reason why a group shouldn't be. And if that's the way to become a group rather than just forming a completely new group, well, so be it. The music industry does change, and it should change. It always has changed.
Yeah.
And so now we're going through a slightly different period. But there doesn't seem to. I just checked figures today. I was interested because my Substack piece next week might be about this, might not. You hear always negatives about the music industry. So I checked the total figures of money being spent by every different age group, say 10 to 12, 20-year-olds, 15 to 30-year-olds, on music overall. And it hasn't gone down, it's gone up. And it's rubbish to say that young people aren't buying music. They're spending 5% more than they were 20 years ago. And every age group's the same. So I don't know where these negative people in the business come from.
Yeah, I think it's the artist, because, again, we have a little tiny record label with people like Edgar Winter and the Knack and Orleans and some America tracks on it. And I used to write them a check for $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And now I'm writing them a check for $400 a quarter, because the royalty structure has changed because of streaming versus downloads, right? And people don't realize
it's only a change, though. If you work out what you get from streaming, it's pretty much the same as you got from records. People forget that when you bought a record, when you had a hit record, when a teenage girl bought a hit single, she played it nearly 1,000 times.
Yeah.
That's
And
true.
yes, you got 100 times what you get for a stream, but she played it 1,000 times.
That's
And if
true.
you get 10 lots of what you get for a stream, you find, oh gosh, I'm getting more from streaming. And and the other thing is, all these kids now, they come in the business to be stars. The Rolling Stones, the Beatles, all the groups around when we were young, they played music because they loved the music. And then, bit of luck, they're able to make money from doing it or earn a living, and then get rich, famous. Now the groups say, let's form a group and try and get a record deal and get famous. That isn't why they played music. They should say, let's form a group because we'd love to play music.
That's
And
right.
it's arse over tits, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Nicely put.
As they say at the Women's Institute in Bebington.
Now look at that. It's 1 hour. It's just flicked up. I think
Exactly
it's time
right. So this has been an
Time for you to have
absolute
a nice stiff whiskey and go
right.
to bed.
Exactly. And we are going to sign you off with a handwritten limerick by Her Majesty. She has a book out called Mrs. McCartney's Liverpool Limericks and Other Random Irish Haikus, available on.
Not a dirty one, is it? Well, maybe it is.
Oh,
I like
no.
it. It doesn't matter. I like a dirty limerick now and again. Go off
well,
you go.
Oh, we have plenty of those.
We'll email you some of those. But here is your.
Oh, you're going
your-
to recite it or just send it to me?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to recite it. Absolutely.
Okay,
Very good.
You count it in, madame.
Right. 1, 2, 3.
There once was a chap named Simon, whose artists were always just vibing, brought wham worldwide fame, has mastered the game, while globe-trotting and always chart climbing. Ta-da!
No, I won't give up my day
Very
job.
good.
Absolutely. Thank you for
One
your
night I
wonderful-
met Angie and Ruth, and I've got to tell you truth. I haven't got the rest yet.
All right. You can email it and we'll read it out.
Clean
on
or
the next one.
dirty. Yeah.
Voilà. I
Yeah.
All
might
right,
forget that.
guys. Thank you for staying up.
Bye,
tonight.
girls.
I'll
Bye-bye.
see you all of a sudden.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Lovely talking.
Like.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD, at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip.